اولین سوال من از آقای شهید اینه که در آخرین گزارشی که توی سازمان ملل داشتن گفتن که یک ملاقات سازنده‌ای با سفیر ایران داشتن در سازمان ملل. بعد از اون خانم فروزنده وضعیتی که نماینده یکی از دیپلمات‌های در سازمان ملل هست، برای اولین بار اقرار کردن که حقوق بشر در ایران نقض میشه، ولی در این حال گزارش آقای شهید رو گفتن که تکراری و اغراق‌آمیزه و در این حال خواستن که سازمان ملل تجدید نظری در این مأموریت فرستاده ویژه حقوق بشر در ایران داشته باشه. سوالم از ایشون اینه که منظورشون از تجدید نظر در مأموریت فرستاده ویژه چیه و آیا اونا پیشنهاد خاصی داشتن در این مورد؟
Well, I don't think Iran's public position with regard to my mandate has actually changed that much, because they have for the past 30 years maintained that Iran does not deserve a UN country mandate. I'm the fourth mandate holder. They have throughout held the position that a country mandate in Iran was unjustified. So they haven't changed from that position. And this is also a position common to nearly all the countries which face a country mandate. None of them actually believe that a country mandate is relevant to that country. So Mrs. Valiati's statements in that regard to state that the country mandate was set up through a politicized debate in the council, that Iran doesn't deserve one and therefore the mandate should not exist, is consistent with the position throughout. But in the past, that position had not deterred Iran from cooperating with mandate holders. There have been a few who allowed to go into the country, and the same goes with other countries as well. They sometimes do cooperate. Other countries never cooperate, like North Korea have never cooperated with the mandate holder. Myanmar did not for a while didn't cooperate, but later on did. So there is an evolution. Now, my meeting with the ambassador in New York and with the ambassador in Geneva were positive because the tone of the meetings were very different from the tone of meetings we held with them before. And they were very positive. They gave me a lot of positive signals about prospects for cooperation, because they were asserting that they have a new government which was keen to embrace better human rights standards. So that tone was consistent with that line of argument. However, coming into the UN debate, countries always insist that they have been singled out unfairly. So Mrs. Valiati's statement therefore comes into that category. I do, however, regret that their continued assertion that my information is either biased or inaccurate isn't valid, because they need to have demonstrate which information is inaccurate, which information is valid. And I operate by the code of conduct as regards the information sources. So, very often, even when countries send private signals of willingness to engage, they may still have a public position which doesn't actually convey that position.
But no particular proposals?
No, there is no particular proposal given to me as to when I can visit the country. But compared to previous...
Did you ask them?
Yes.
Did you ask to travel to Iran?
Yes, I have asked repeatedly to be able to allow to go into the country. They
after
yes,
Rohani?
Yes. They have not said no, but they have not said yes either. So what I'm hoping is that by continued engagement with the government of Iran, that such a visit might become possible. I'm not the only person who's been denied a visit to Iran. There are many who've been lining up to go from the UN mandate system to go there. None of them has been able to go so far. The other point is, even if they haven't allowed me into the country, they do comment on my reports in quite detail. For all my UN reports, they have submitted almost para by para commentary, which is a good thing, because they actually are present in their perspective. They do meet me in Geneva and New York, and I've had a couple of lengthy meetings discussing my report as well. So there is an evolving cooperation, which I hope, given the new dispensation Mr. Rouhani is presenting, would lead to a more constructive time.
Do you believe him?
On which part?
The fact that he's approaching the West, let's say the West. He hasn't said yes, but he didn't also say no. He wants to have constructive discussions, I believe.
Well, I think it is obvious that under President Rouhani, Iran's approach towards engagement has changed. That is why you had this nuclear talks in Geneva, which produced an outcome. But that hasn't yet so far, translated into a human rights side engagement. There hasn't been any person invited to go in terms of a mandate holder into the country.
Do you think he's building up a relationship, or do you think he's installing something?
It's still early days to determine exactly what he's doing. I am still cautiously optimistic that the positive signals he's giving in other areas would spill over into the human rights field as well. Iran is heading towards the Universal Periodic Review next year, and it will be, I think, helpful for Iran, even from the president's point of view, to have better cooperation with the UN system before they go into the review. So there are, I think, material advantages to Iran from engaging with the UN system.
Such as?
Being able to respond positively to the obligations undertook during the UPR, to demonstrate that they have been willing to take some steps to meet those obligations. Information so far I have is that they haven't done much.
ببخشید، برای اولین بار بوده که در مورد راپورت باشون از طرف ایران مذاکره میکردن؟ قبلا توی رژیم قبلی نبوده؟
Always Iran had responded to my draft. The UN system is that I draft a report and all drafts are passed by the mandate holders of the respective country concerned for them to comment. So Iran had always, except for the very first report, which had a very short time frame, given detailed commentary. And on the back of each of these reports, I've had a detailed discussion with the delegation coming from Tehran, including with very senior members of the Iranian Human Rights Commission, the High Council for Human Rights. And we sit down for a couple of hours, discuss the report in terms of their views on what is in my report. This hasn't actually produced any sort of shift on the ground, as it were, as I can observe, but the fact that they are willing to engage with me and discuss the reports is useful. It's not negotiations. I don't negotiate what's in the report. The report's been published, been discussed. They give me their commentary in that. My reports are not negotiable in that sense.
Another question is, با اومدن روحانی یه روزنای امیدی باز شد. ابتدای زندانیای سیاسی آزاد شدن و حرکت‌هایی هم در جهت رفع ممنوعیت برخی نشریات و انجمن‌ها صورت گرفت. ولی همزمان دیدیم افراد بیشتری بازداشت شدن، نشریات دیگه بسته شدن و این اواخر آمار اعدامی‌ها به نحو چشمگیری بالا رفته. ما می‌خوایم بدونیم که نظر شما راجع به این چیه؟ ارزیابیتون از این وضعیت چیه؟
Of course, there appears to be a greater willingness on the part of a number of journalists and civil society to become more active, but the space they have for activism is very limited. As we've seen in the case of arrests of netizens recently, the closure of a newspaper, Bahar, recently, as well as the continued executions, in Iran. So on the ground, I have not observed any substantive change to celebrate. But the fact that Mr. Rouhani remains committed to advancing reform steps is hopeful, such as in his publication of his Citizens' Rights Charter. Although there are issues with it, the fact that it's on the table is a good thing, and he's inviting debate on that. That's also a very good thing. So let us see what the outcome of that would be. There should be a discourse, there should be a debate, and there should be space for that debate. If that space seems to be increasing, that is a positive sign. Although, these sort of changes don't become visible overnight. There'll be many people who will contest that. So what I am trying very hard is to identify any positive steps taken by the government. Be very focused on violations, because the victims also need to be given protection, to be addressed, and to be helped in seeking redress for their violations.
Did you address these matters to his people, to the people you spoke to?
in the government of Iran.
Yeah.
My discussions with them were in September, the last one, and so we discussed the issues I've raised in my report, their perspectives, and in a meeting in mid-October was still very early days. I'm still not pronouncing a judgment on the government. I'm still saying that I have not seen much visible change on the ground, but that I remain cautiously optimistic that some change would be possible. So in my meetings, discussed was, yes, the ongoing concerns were raised, my concerns about executions that are in the report, my concerns about discrimination that are in the report, my concerns about persecution on religious grounds that are also in my report.
You mentioned them by name.
Individuals?
Yeah.
No, I didn't have the time to raise individuals because my report was on the table, the names were there.
Well,
So there was really, indeed, yes, there was no necessity for me to go down a list of names, but the names actually have been on my reports for a long time.
با توجه به اینکه مذاکرات اتمی عمده شده، الان خودشون هم اینو گفتن، و حقوق بشر در سایه قرار گرفته، این رو چجوری میبینن؟ این آیا تاثیر گذاشته که پشتیبانی جهانی از کارزاریشون رو، از کارشون رو تضعیف کنه؟
I don't think the nuclear talks have necessarily weakened the human rights discussion. It depends very much on the political will there is amongst human rights champions to keep on talking about this. So while people have embraced the nuclear deal that was reached in Geneva last month, which they should, I don't think any country has so far said that they therefore are content with with the human rights situation in the country. Many have spoken out on these issues. They will continue to be focused on this subject, and there are also voices from Iran which come out on this subject. Just this week we heard about the head of judicial Said Larjani's comments about the human rights demands and Islamic requirements, and then the rebuttal which came from the professor at Tehran University, again demonstrating that there is a discourse in the country. So I don't think, given the situation Iran is in actually with regard to human rights, that a nuclear deal will end a concern about human rights. Although I would caution all stakeholders that they should not regard the nuclear deal as a reason to sideline concerns about human rights.
What's your take on human? How do you see human rights if you have a country with the Sharia as its main law, and the Sharia maintains the death penalty, hanging, stoning, whatever, there are more of those. What do you want them to change to come closer to your ideal belief of human rights for a country?
Well, there are 57 countries in the OIC, of whom about 46 are Muslim majority countries. Nearly all of them say that Islam is either a source of legislation or a primary source of legislation in their country. Or Sharia is a primary source of legislation. Many of them even say Islam is a state religion. But not all of them have therefore found that there should be the kind of penalties that you find in the Iranian penal code. So there is a variety of Sharia. Sharia hasn't produced only one set of laws. Sharia has produced a variety of set of laws, and in many countries, Sharia has not been an impediment to observing a number of human rights norms. Although, there are, if you apply any religious code without reading them into modern context, you would find difficulties. Yeah. But Sharia per se has not shown to be a problem across a large number of countries. Although, if you speak to more conservative elements, they would, hark back to very old practices and say that's what they want to do.
So the death penalty, maintaining the death penalty does not mean that a country does violate a human right.
Well, under international law, death penalty is not illegal but it does say you can only impose it for the most grave offences, which typically involves a death, a homicide, and also after due process of law has been assured, and also after the person who is convicted has had a chance for an appeal, and also right for clemency. So there are a number of safeguards built into it, With Iran, what I find is that the safeguards are not operative, that the trials do not meet
Not
the
a fair
safeguards for due process rights,
Yeah.
and that the range of offences for which death penalty is prescribed is way beyond what is permissible under international law.
Yeah.
Now, Islam does not make death penalty mandatory. Even if you look at the Qisas, the Quran says, stresses the benefits of forgiveness. So you cannot say, because you subscribe to Sharia, then you're condemned to kill people.
بعد از توافق ژنو این امکان به وجود اومد که که بازرسان سازمان انرژی اتمی به سری ترین پایگاه های ایران بتونن برن و بازرسی کنن. چرا این امکان برای گزارشگر ویژه به وجود نمیاد که بره فقط یک سفری به تهران داشته باشه و با مردم و سازمان های حقوق بشری ملاقات کنه؟
Well, in the case of the nuclear facility, what Iran is doing is demonstrating that its words actually match what is on the ground. They are allowing inspection to verify what they have placed on paper. Now, with human rights, Iran in fact is saying quite the reverse. They are saying that their norms and cultural precepts don't allow Iran to meet a number of international obligations. So I presume the difficulty is because there is a huge gap between what they practice and what they say, and that a report might actually highlight this gap. If you look at previous reports coming out of Iran, this was precisely the issue, that a number of deficits were identified. In fact, that's the whole purpose of a visit. The visit is designed to identify areas in which the country concerned can address issues and therefore improve its performance. It's not a visit there to say everything is great in this country, because where things are great, they should be noted, but where things are not great, they should also be noted. So I think any visit by a human rights mandate holder will identify the gaps and lay them out before the country concerned for them to address it. And this might be the reason why they're reluctant to have people come to the country. But if they do look at the whole situation, they would realize that a report that comes after a visit probably carries more of their perspective than a report that is produced without similar cooperation on their part. So if they are concerned that my facts don't represent their perspective, or my reports don't represent their perspective, then they should engage with me more and have more of their views come up through my reports. So I think they should realize that a visit actually serves them more than not allowing me into the country.
قبلا دسترسی به اطلاعات در مورد نقض حقوق بشر چون اجازه نداشتن ایران برن، بیشتر از طریق ایرانیان خارج از کشور بوده. الان این سالهای اخیر با توجه به رشد اینترنت و سوشال مدیا خواستم بدونم آیا این امکان بیشتری براشون فراهم شده که بتونن مستقیم با قربانیان نقض حقوق بشر و خانواده‌هاشون تماس بگیرن؟
Absolutely. I have interviewed up to 500 people now, and about a third of them are people in the country who have been able to approach through electronic means. I'm not even sure if I was allowed into the country, I would have similar access. Because if you look at previous visits and the reports from those visits, not in Iran, quite frequently human rights victims feel a bit scared to come out and then walk across the road and go meet a rapporteur, because they can be observed talking to a rapporteur and they could have repercussions coming from that later on. But through electronic means, I'm able to communicate to them without risk to them. Even if they are frightened to come out of their homes and go to a hotel to meet a rapporteur, they can talk to me in the privacy of their homes, and a lot of them have been doing that. So you are right, today, unlike say in previous decades, rapporteurs are able to reach out to countries through internet and talk to them. And I come to like Iran, where internet is widely used, then that access is there. But I must say that this doesn't substitute for a visit, because I can then visit a prison, for example, and see the place of detention, talk to guards, and observe what's going on. That is of course indispensable. There's a replacement for that. At the same time, whether I go to a country or I operate through the internet, there are areas which I cannot reach out to. So some of the poorest regions perhaps, or the more distant regions. And that would be a deficit in all the reporting. But then we're not saying we're producing a complete encyclopedia on the country. We are presenting representative issues which speak of wider problems in the country.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Shahid.
My pleasure.
Thank you.